If you don't really follow news, if you don't really do any investigating for yourself, you probably believe insane nonsense. You probably believe things that aren't real. You'll believe things about Trump that never happened because the media they play this game of telephone with each other. They circle around sharing the same stories and repeating them over and over again without facts, and they live in a bubble separated from most people. The best example of this, the best, image is the Dave Chappelle special, which I've highlighted several times in the past week, where the critics, I think right now out of 10 reviews, has a 30% critic score, but out of 20,000 audience reviews, it's 99%. The media has become a weird bubble, but it's also a left-wing bubble. It is this weird leftist ideology. Well, now we have a 2020 presidential Democratic candidate learning full well the power of the media and what happens to you when you go up against the establishment. Marianne Williamson, she is a bit of a kooky character, I will admit, but she seems very nice, and I think she's a warming presence on that debate stage. I don't think she's made it this time. I don't know if she's going to be in it. But she was talking about the power of love and pushing back and rejecting the negativity in politics. I can absolutely respect that. I do think she said things that are interesting and weird in the past. Many of her tweets were highlighted. But the media has become this weird, left-wing biased clique of the popular kids who aren't too smart, are a bit vapid, and spread lies about people because they think they're just cooler than you. What ends up happening? Marianne Williamson says it herself. Liberals are mean and they lie. Quote, "I thought the right did that." Welcome to the party. This is one of the biggest points of the culture war. People who don't know because they don't care and they don't pay attention, and they blame everyone on the right. And then guess what? When you challenge this, when you call out the media, they call you right-wing. Well, I don't think they're going to be able to call Marianne Williamson right-wing. But what they do is they smear her as a crazy hippie crystal conspiracy theorist. And it's very, very unfair. Look, criticize her, criticize her for the things she said, but they play this game, right, where they talk about crystals. At first, someone just made a joke, saying she's like a hippie crystal lady. It's the spiritual people who wear crystals to control energy. I don't know how it works. But she doesn't. She's actually not literally a crystal person. But because of the joke, it runs wild. And then in an interview, someone asks her about it. And she says, "I don't own any crystals." You see how the joke runs wild. They did the same thing to Sarah Palin. It was Tina Fey on Saturday Night Live said, "I can see Russia from my house." But Sarah Palin never said that. However, because many of these people who don't pay attention on the left, they can't separate fact from fiction, really believed Sarah Palin said she could see Russia from her house. When what she really said was, from the westernmost point of Alaska, you can actually visibly see Russia. So they actually deal with Russia going through the Bering Strait and things like that. They actually have to have those relationships. That's actually a very apt statement. Instead, the media makes it a joke. People on the left who don't pay attention and don't read believe it's true. And now poor Marianne Williamson, who, again, I have no problem saying she's kooky a bit, but she's getting beaten down by these smears. And she had to learn the hard way. So let's read this story, and we'll talk about the bias in the media and this weird clickiness and how it's impacting even a Democratic presidential candidate. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address, but the best thing you can do, share this video. Why? Well, we're talking about media bias again. YouTube is absolutely biased, and they prop up mainstream channels and de-rank independent political commentary like this. So because we're going to be talking about someone who is a Democratic candidate calling out the left, people won't be happy about it. But can I stress this point? When I say I hold, mostly center-left policy, they say Tim's lying. He's secretly conservative. Well, when Marianne Williamson says the same thing, can you please stop? This is a perfect example of how the left is trying to excise everyone they can, for whatever reason, to create this sphere of ideological purity. Great. When you get rid of people like Marianne Williamson, I don't think there's a left anymore. Let's read. From Fox News. Long shot Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson suggested in a new interview that she was surprised to find liberals are so mean and even lie, lashing out at the party's treatment of her spirituality-tinged campaign. Williamson sat down with New Yorker editor David Remnick for a wide-ranging podcast conversation in which she also denied being an anti-vaxxer. She was asked about her plan to take on President Trump with kindness and the politics of love, as well as the reception her campaign has gotten. "I know this sounds naive," Williamson said. "I didn't think the left was so mean. I didn't think the left lied like this. I thought the right did that. I thought we were better." Williamson said, "The haters in this country have been collectivized for political purpose," and added that liberal New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof would have been her ideal Secretary of State before he condemned her candidacy. "But then I read that he can't stand me, so he probably wouldn't want to work for me." But why can't he stand her? Is it because she's actually a bad person? I think Marianne Williamson's actually a really nice and lovely person. I absolutely respect her calls for love and kindness, and she's refused time and time again to make personal attacks on other candidates. That is extremely respectable, tremendously respectable, but they tear her down anyway. Why? People love being angry. They love being angry. There's even an ounce of anger in me presenting this. I am angry that they would go after a woman who's trying to advocate for kindness. Look, you can point out she's a long shot candidate, but they lie about so much, claiming she's an anti-vaxxer. Now, I can't speak to the vaccination stuff. She said, Williamson also told The New Yorker that she is not an anti-vaxxer and admitted that vaccinations save lives, saying a sloppy comment resulted in her being labeled as anti-vaxxer, which put a target on her for social media mockery. "I said that they were draconian. I said that they were Orwellian," she said. "I would not say that now. It was a sloppy comment that a presidential candidate should not have said." At one point during the freewheeling interview, Williamson oddly said that Trump's facial features have changed over the years but declined to elaborate. I don't care about Trump's facial features, but I'll make a point about the vaccination stuff. Pointing out that people calling for government-mandated medication is draconian and Orwellian is a factual statement. I believe vaccinations are incredible, and they've done amazing things, and I believe they're extremely important, and I hope you are all getting your kids vaccinated. A lot of the talk about, anti-vaxxer stuff is based in misinformation, and it's unfortunate. I also think the government shouldn't be mandating. Look, it's a nuanced issue, but government-mandated medication terrifies me. It is draconian. She was not wrong, but they call her an anti-vaxxer because of that. They do this to everybody, and they use public shame to get you to backpedal and then defend authoritarian policies like mandatory medication. I'm sorry, I find that creepy. I really, really do. However, in my personal opinion, I don't want to get into the vax stuff. I think we should, kids should have to be vaccinated if they want to go to public schools. I see no problem with that because you don't have to. Homeschooling is an option and private schooling is an option. So if the public votes that you need to be vaccinated to go to school, I see no problem with that. However, I don't know exactly what her comments were about, but I would certainly say if you're going to mandate medication, that's weird. So I think in the end, what they do is they take anything they can to try and destroy you. And she's really felt the brunt of this. It's actually sad. They say that the spiritual author turned presidential hopeful has called for a Department of Peace. I think it's silly. She tweeted this: "Millions of us seeing Dorian turn away from land is not a wacky idea," she said in a now deleted tweet. "It's a creative use of the power of the mind. 2 minutes prayer, visualization, meditation for those in the way of the storm." Journalist Yashir Ali tweeted the post that Williamson promptly accused him of trying to debunk, counter, or mischaracterize anything I do. It's no surprise. They do the exact same thing to Trump. But Trump is a Republican. So they just say, oh, Trump's just trying to come after the press. No. The reality is the media is biased. Take a look at this story from November of 2018. It was the Arizona State University questioned 462 financial journalists around the country. Now, I understand they're financial. They followed up with 18 additional interviews. The journalists worked for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, AP, and a number of other newspapers. And what did they find? What they found surprised them. Even the supposedly hard-nosed financial reporters were overwhelmingly liberal. Of 462 people surveyed, 17.6% called themselves very liberal, while 40.84% described themselves as somewhat liberal. When you add it up, 58.47% admitted to being left of center. Along with that, another 37.12% claimed to be moderate. That means there are 13 liberals for every one conservative. Whatever happened to ideological diversity, they ask. The results are clear. In this story from, this is Columbia Journalism Review, September 12th, 2018. The results of a new Knight Foundation Gallup poll released Tuesday won't come as a huge surprise to most journalists. Trust in media is down again. We can talk about all the reasons trust in media is down, but it becomes exemplified when even Adult Swim a few days ago publishes this comic. Now, I highlighted this comic in my story about I believe it was about Dave Chappelle, But this is very, very important for those that didn't see it. For those that are listening, let me describe it to you. You have a bunch of people pointing, was one person pointing to the sky. Oh my God, it's coming. We have to hide, they say. The next panel, quick, in here, as they run into a cave. And what are they running from? A gigantic concrete The Truth in the sky. And why are they running from it? What might they be doing? What might these people be? In the cave, that someone says, oof, at least in here we can safely work on our journalism. With lies, lies, lies spray painted on the wall. With someone being filmed as they draw a picture of a unicorn that says lies on it. Adult Swim. Mainstream millennial Adult Swim tweeted this comic out. And boy, was the left angry. But this is the perfect example. Is Marianne Williamson a crystal-loving hippie lunatic? You can call her whatever you want, but the crystal things was made up. She's not a crystal lady. It was a joke run wild. And the author of this comic, the person who drew it, said, a lot of what we see today could easily be fact-checked by the public, so trust is down. Here's the problem. Marianne Williamson learned this the hard way, but I wonder if her supporters are now going to learn this too. And at what point do we push back and say media is being dominated by freaky weirdos and they're manipulating the left into believing insane, weird things, and people don't like it? Guess what? Liberals are mean. They do lie. But I think liberals is the wrong word. It's this new left. Liberals have been excised from the left. We have this story, which came out yesterday evening. The Washington Post's Lost Summer. And this is from Stephanie Grisham and Hogan Gidley. And of course, there were some mainstream reporters saying, oh, harumph, why are Trump appointees slamming the press? Why are they using taxpayer-funded money to spend time writing about the problems of the media? Because the media doesn't do its job anymore. And it's not a conservative opinion. Marianne Williamson's calling out of the left, saying they lie, okay? I know she's not saying journalism, but we know about the bias, okay? But at the very least, her coming out and saying this should be a wake-up call. People say, Tim, why do you rag on the left so much? Why is Marianne Williamson doing it? She's a Democratic candidate. You'd think she thought it was conservatives. She said it. I thought the right did this. Welcome to the other side of the flames, okay? It doesn't matter what your political leaning is. It matters that you speak up, stand up, and try and fight for what you believe in. Marianne Williamson believes in reparations. I disagree with most of her policy positions. But I don't think it's fair to lie about what she believes in. I think we should represent her fairly and let people decide for themselves. And because she stood up, they tried to destroy her. It's a game. It's the snooty, popular kids in high school laughing, pointing the finger, thinking they're so smart, and they're not. This story is really interesting. It talks about fake news from the Washington Post. They say, it's been a lost summer for the Washington Post. From Memorial Day to Labor Day, the Post has some pretty embarrassing moments. Whether it was incorrectly stating that presidents do not deliver remarks on the 4th of July, ignoring speeches by Reagan, Kennedy, and Obama, or being called out for shoddy, political motivated fact-checking, the Post's lost summer culminated with a fateful day in August when it was forced to issue 15 corrections to a single article. Yeah, it's the left. Look, I'm not saying this to act like conservatives on the right don't make mistakes. I'm saying this as somebody who was on the left for their whole life, witnessing all of these problems. And today, I'm not surprised to see someone like Marianne Williamson saying the exact same thing. Now, look, she's got some other stuff going on, controversial health remarks. She was tweeting some journalist's mom, direct messaging this person. But here's another example of how mean these people are. Apparently, Marianne Williamson knows Molly Jong-Fast's mother, something like that. I don't know. And DM'd her saying, your daughter is mean or whatever. So what does she do? Molly Jong-Fast publishes the DMs. She says, Marianne Williamson DM'd my mom to complain about me and I have receipts. Also, my mom's phone doesn't do screenshots or something. Anyway, the point is, why would you publish someone's DMs? It just proves Marianne right. They are mean. They are very, very mean. So let's read a little bit more about the Washington Post's complete failures. As the summer came to a close, the Post set out to report the president's summer accomplishments, but reporting is not what the Post does. Two of its writers published an opinion article they claimed was news, but that instead pushed their own personal political narrative that President Trump had a lost summer of squandered opportunities and few accomplishments. They say the truth is Trump racked up many well-documented victories that directly benefited the American people at home and abroad. When the Post asked, the White House proudly provided it with a detailed list of the administration's 26 most important successes of the summer. Of those 26 accomplishments, the Post chose to publish just 4, which it buried under 11 paragraphs of editorialized critique. They say, media bias comes in 2 forms. It plays a role in deciding what news is and is not, what is and is not covered, and also in deciding how that news is covered. In this instance, the Post's reporters are guilty of both. It is obvious that they had their own predetermined, pre-written narrative, and they simply discarded information that could have challenged that. This is not only a disservice to readers, but it's also an offensive, egregious affront to true news journalism. There's more. I think we can leave it there. There was some other stuff that I thought was really, really interesting. They talk about, the rat-infested stuff. I'll read this paragraph. Many in the media jumped on the bandwagon to rip Trump for calling Baltimore rat-infested. But the media never apologized when a video surfaced of Baltimore Mayor Catherine Pugh making the exact same complaint. When the president called out the comments and media posts from Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib, the press dismissed the Democrats' bigotry as a mere invitation to dialogue about Jewish influence in the world. There was also a summer's worth of major outlets openly questioning Trump's sanity. But the hourly gaffes by Joe Biden are part of what humanizes him. We get it. We know exactly how the game is played. And I think for the rest of us, seeing even a Democratic candidate call this out, it's been refreshing to see Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang question media bias. Tulsi Gabbard more so. She's even suing Google. But maybe at a certain point, the bubble has to burst. The way I've described it in the past is that there used to be, 2 sides, the left and the right. And the left is in this spiral where everyone is playing a game of telephone with these extreme stories. And because of that, the narrative about what's going on is getting crazier and crazier. It came to a point, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, when an MSNBC host said Trump was talking about exterminating Latinos, which is an egregious lie, and it's just downright nuts. But this game of telephone it's just insane. People are talking about like Trump rounding up citizens of the country and deporting them. It's like, what are you talking about? Nothing has happened. Calm down. But here's the thing. Moderates and conservatives are free from this. They've stepped through the flames. And the media is spitting faster and faster in desperation as their ratings drop. A CNN just recently did this town hall on climate change, and they were last in the ratings. People would rather watch MSNBC and Fox News on a regular night than all of the presidential candidates. What's happening is these media companies are so desperate. They're ramping up the rhetoric and spinning faster and faster. And as the cycle spins faster and faster, it ejects people. They get thrown from it. We're at a point now where Marianne Williamson, the kooky left-wing, Democratic candidate, was just thrown from it. And now she is outside of the fire, looking at the left, spinning it like in pure insanity. And she's going, that's not true. They're lying about me. Well, don't fear, Marianne. We're all still, we're all here on the other side of that flame. The flame reference, I believe, is Andrew Breitbart. When he said, many people on the left are scared to walk through because they feel on the other side, it's like you're a social outcast. But once you do, you realize life is better. It's free. It's normal. You don't have to be a conservative. You can be a moderate liberal. You can even be a socialist. And as long as you call out the lies, people don't care. It reminds me of this story. I was in Berkeley, and I saw a guy wearing a mask with the sickle and hammer flag. It was a communist flag mask, and he was wearing a communist shirt. And so I asked him, how do you feel, you're a communist. How do you feel about the authoritarian regimes? And he said, I reject them. Communism shouldn't be that way. And I was like, yeah, it's too bad. They all end up being that way. And he was like, right, but it's, he still rejected it. And I was like, okay, well, what about Antifa? They're showing up. Many of them are communists and they're getting violent. And he said, that's wrong. They shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, wait, whoa, really? I was like, you're a masked communist handing out literature in Berkeley. And he was like, yeah, Antifa is absolutely wrong for the violence. And I shook his hand. I don't care if you're a communist, dude. If you denounce violence and authoritarianism, we can have a conversation about your political beliefs. And I stress this too. There is such thing as libertarian communism or anarcho-communism. And people on the right don't seem to understand. They're like, no, that's not possible. But listen, 10 people living on a farm. There you go. They just work and they support each other. It works really, really well on a small scale. So yeah, you can have people advocating that. Unfortunately, I think as you scale it up to beyond maybe like 40 people, it doesn't work anymore. But there is small scale tribal anarcho-communism at the root. So the point is, I don't care what you believe, Marianne Williamson. I don't care if you actually do have crystals. I think it's important that we fairly represent who you are and what you believe, and then people get to choose if that's something they agree with. I do believe you'd said things that I completely disagree with, but I respect you trying to be civil. Look at what Hillary Clinton said. We'll be civil once we win. Marianne Williamson stepped up. She was an outlier on the left who stepped up and says, we need to be civil now. We need kindness and respect and refuse to personally attack people. So I give a standing ovation for that. Because even if I don't agree with you politically, the fact that you're willing to be kind and respectful is exactly what we need. It's like Daryl Davis. Okay, you guys know who he is? He's the dude who de-radicalized Klan members. Why? Because he listened to them. He gave them the respect they asked for, and they listened back. And that's why I think it's important. But you know what? Just like they smear her, they smeared us. They claim that we're all the bad people and everyone's wrong and evil, and they mock and belittle her. When she had good intentions, she was just a little wrong. It's important to be nicer. And I can say the same thing to like the anti-SJW community on YouTube, and I have. At the event we just did in Philly, Sargon and I were on a panel called Admitting You Were Wrong, and Sargon mentioned that he used to be mean. He said he wasn't always mean. He started out very nice and then eventually became mean, but then realized it was wrong. And I applaud that, absolutely. And look, I understand I've been mean, I've been angry in the past too. I think it's fine if people, get emotional periodically, but not if you build your entire, culture around it. And that's what she's facing now. So, honestly, I feel like I've talked about some of this stuff just so much, we all understand it already. But it really does mean a lot to see Marianne come out and say this. I thought it was the right, she said. No. The left, they're mean and they lie. Well, congratulations, You've stepped through the fire, and I mean that sincerely. It's a good thing. And you can see them for who they are and what they're doing. And we need to stop them because they're being destructive to our community. So this is really great news, okay? It's really great news because if you can get people like Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang, Marianne Williamson to start seeing the facade and seeing what this weird, biased, far-left ideology, these weird people are doing, these bullies, well, we're going to be better off. The sooner we get rid of this weird bully, outrage, lie, nonsense from the media, the sooner we can fix things. Until then, though, Marianne, now you might understand why people voted for Trump. Now you might understand why they won't listen, they don't believe the media at all. Trump can say whatever he wants. People are going to say, I don't care. The media just lies all the time. And she says it's the left. Yep. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. And I will see you all there.